Exactly. Yeah, I was in South Africa. And we gather at the river, exactly. Yeah, we sing about gathering at the river. Lucas, can you hand out one to Dave? Oh, thank you. We didn't sing about the monkeys? Okay. All right. Um, Katrina, there is a handout of like there is Kathy, there is a handout there if you wanna grab it or like. So yeah. Okay. So tonight, it's gonna be less of me and more of you. Yeah. So, um, and this is the last night. So, okay. We're gonna. I have a question for you. What motivates us? Food, guilt, money. Exactly. That's the perfect combination. Yeah, that's the deadline. Okay, yeah. There is a phrase when we talk about. I mean, it's a joke about Bolivians saying that you must shake before you use. Meaning you have to like agitate people so that they can move or do something. So yeah, I mean probably the joke is not translatable. So yeah, but anyway, so we are gonna read the story of Zacchaeus on Luke 19. Um, I'm gonna read it, or if somebody wants to read it. No? Okay. Um, it would be nice someone to read it. Okay. 19, 1 to 10. There you go.
Okay. He entered Jericho and was passing through, and there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and rich, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not on account of the crowd, because he was small of stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for I must go to your house today. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all murmured, he has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost.
Thank you. That was a really good voice. I wish I had like he entered Jericho and or something like that. That's a really good voice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, so let's sit for that with that for a moment. How does that resonate with us? Um, let's take about 30 seconds to just think in that story. So, what if we were Zacchaeus? What, you know, Zacchaeus has been recruited by the Romans to collect taxes for the Jews. When such appointed collectors were able to obtain tax revenue beyond a defined level, they could keep the excess for themselves. Consequently, tax collectors were motivated to be harsh in their dealings, and they were despised by almost everyone. So we've got someone who was, who had the stereotype of being greedy. And we have, and Jesus is like, yeah, I mean, I want to be a guest in your house. Imagine Zacchaeus like, oh no, I have to clean everything for you. No, no, no. Can you come tomorrow, or can you come the day afterwards? Or, you know, it was an honor at that time. And people criticized Jesus. It's like, how come are you having fellowship with this person? Uh, so being welcoming is also carrying a cross. It might be, it might take criticism, is to be radical, to make the difference. We talked about like, what if someone really mean comes into our church and tries to change everything? And I think in those moments, it is very good to ask God, what is the purpose of this? What I'm meant to do in this? How, and I want to ask you some questions and think about this story. How did you encounter God? Like Zacchaeus, up a tree, out on a lamb? Do you think Jesus' words in verses 9-10 stop the crowd's muttering? Do you think that when Jesus was like, "Oh yeah, I'll come to your house," people were like, "Oh," you know, and they stop talking about it? And in that verse, on what basis did Jesus, do you think, said, "Well, you've been um, today's salvation has come to this house"? How can we, like Jesus, have fellowship with persons who are in the position of the outsider? Remember, all the people that were with Jesus, there was a lot of people that Zacchaeus was like, maybe those people are going to criticize me, but that didn't stop Zacchaeus to approaching Jesus, even though it was a hostile environment. And Jesus, so it was not a safe place, but Jesus helped him in saying, I'll come to your house, and set the example for other people. So I'm gonna say these questions again. How do you encounter God? Up on a tree? Out on a lamp? Do you think Jesus' words in verses 9-10 stopped the crowds muttering? Why? Or why not? And on what basis did Jesus confirm the salvation of Zacchaeus? And how can we, like Jesus, help people in the position of an outsider? Let's sit with that for another 3 minutes. And if you want to share something, feel free. Can we have the next slide? This has been done by LifeQuest, which is a Christian organization that do this kind of statistics. Look at the percentage of people who visit the church because of an ad. It's quite old, but I think it's very um, it reflects what we are discussing here. Because of a radio, 0.0 0.62%, for a newspaper, 0.72%. They drive by the church, 1.35. And I'm very interested that it's very interesting that 65.83% visit a church because of a friend. It's not, and that is actually why I became a Quaker, because I knew of Christian churches. There are lots of churches in Bolivia in every corner. And I knew that they were singing, like kind of Jesus punk hymns. And, I knew that they did all the stuff that I like. They play sports, like they would have this community. I knew that. But it was a friend that invited me. And I decided to go because I trusted him and because I had a deep connection with him. But I didn't there were always people in the streets, people giving flyers, people, and I was just not interested. I had no prior connection. But he was a friend who just invited me to church, and I said, well, you're my friend. Let's go. Can we see the next one? And the reasons why a visitor returns to church. The top reasons are friend, because of friends, because of worship, because of warmth. So your first, you've only got one shot in a church. Either you feel the warmth or you never come back again. And as we said, this is like, okay, so this is our only chance to show our testaments, to put in practice what it is on the book, what it is on our website, what it is. And we see that the Friends Church, the word friends, it's like, okay, so friendly people, I suppose. And I have a question. Another question. I have lots of questions. Which of those now we have so I have some phrases and quotes from people, and I want to listen to this. Because I have a friend in the congregation, or made a friend during my visits. This is of people who returned. Because I have a friend in the congregation, or made a friend during my visits. Because the quality of the worship service helped me grow closer to God. Because the quality of the Sunday school helped myself or my child grow closer to God. Because my experiences there helped me in my search for meaning in life. Because of childcare was offered was excellent, and I felt good about my kid in nursery and or Sunday school. Because the building is such a marvelous facility with many opportunities. These are all factors that affect the way we welcome people, and might be the reason why people stay. When I attended Sarah Miller's workshop on how to be welcoming for people with neurodivergent needs, she's the living testimony of how we were successful in welcoming, because she was looking for a church where her kids would be welcomed, and we embrace that. But that is just one example, and there could be many of how we can improve our welcoming. So we are talking about a fundamental change in attitude towards those outside the church and towards those who come to the church as visitors. What does it mean for your congregation? If this study is going to be fruitful for you, and it becomes, if this, all what we are talking about becomes of great importance to begin working on a vision of what it means for you, for your church, to become a place of great hospitality, What does that mean for your physical facilities? What does that mean for the initial greeting people receive? What would you want to experience if you came to your congregation as a visitor? You may want to visit some other congregations to experience what it is like to be a visitor. Have you ever gone to another congregation that you don't have any uh, connection whatsoever? Totally new, and see what it's like. I would encourage you to do that and how it feels. I really like so West Charleston Church of the Brethren has on their vision, and they are a multi-generational, multiracial, very diverse church. Their journey started with this statement: we are aware and concerned that in our society, many experience discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, native language, legal status, social or economic status, religious background, age, ability, gender identity, or sexual orientation. We confess that we are still dismantling ourselves in our structures of some of the bias and prejudice that has been internalized and built into the systems we live in. As followers of Jesus, who said you should love your neighbor as yourself, we, the West Charleston Church of the Brethren, agree that and this is the important part, we will offer unconditional welcome. We will stand in solidarity with all our members and friends who are vulnerable or marginalized because of their identity or legal status, and commit ourselves to provide support, protection, and shelter as appropriate to the extent of our capacity. Toward this end, we commit to our own transformation individually and collectively as we strive for the beloved community of Jesus. I remember talking to the pastor, and there were a lot of people resistant to change, and they had to spend 10 years in their transformation, and they are still on that path. But it started to formulate this vision of, do we really want to welcome people unconditionally? And whenever they had a bump and there were a lot of tensions during their meetings, they said, well, we committed ourselves to welcome people unconditionally. And then they started again. It's not an easy path. It's going to be loads of bumps in the road. But it is something that I feel Jesus calls us to do. So I have in your copies, I have descriptions of some people who can visit your church. Can we have groups, all of you together, if that's okay? And can you separate in groups and then discuss, like, put yourself in the position, choose any of those cases, and then talk about how would you be received, and how would your church react, and how would you feel if you were the persons on the paper. And so it's how would you feel as the person on the paper, and how your church would react, and how can we start thinking about those dynamics. Let's have 7 minutes to discuss that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we need to regather. So let's hear Um, let's hear about this group. Yes. I mean, Michael Sherman can be the representative. What? Oh no, like what do you talk? What did you discuss? And I was yeah. I mean, Michael Sherman can go.
That's my fault.
There we go.
So we didn't talk about what I'm going to say. We didn't really talk about, but we did, I'll get to one of the questions that Myron put on the screen was a question about welcoming the outsider, and in terms of equality and equity, we're all outsiders, and that's the only way we can work in equity and equality in relationship to one another. And so the story that one of the stories we were talking about is Sophia was a single parent who came to the church I was a pastor at some point, and we talked a little bit about how I was nervous as the pastor and how Sophia was nervous as the parent, and how kids would be received, and I was nervous about how we would receive their presence. And that was it seems like a really clear bit. There's a story from the time my mother was the pastor at Valley Mills, where Rachel is the pastor currently, where one of the kids was about 4 or 5 and he learned a word with great power from his parents who were fighting. And they came to church. And I don't know if they knew what was going to happen when they came to church. But their son shared the word he learned, and it rhymes with truck, up and down the center aisles of the of the sanctuary, and up and down the hallway of the church, over and over and over again. I was there that Sunday. I heard it. Yeah. So Sylvia says he had a speech impediment, and that's what his dad would say if you asked him about it. And I think about the courage to show up that day. And I think about the way the meeting welcomed the moment that family was in, that the kid was talking about really hard things that were happening at home. And they showed up, and the meeting did not condemn. We laughed about it. We talked about, there was conversation about how uncomfortable it was. That's one of the most beautiful stories I have in my pocket for a welcome. They were members of the church, but it is a wonderful story of welcome because we are all outsiders. And so they were the recognition that everybody in some form or another had been in that moment where someone had learned something they probably shouldn't have, and they were learning how to deal with it in ways that were embarrassing, were frustrating, and just it's a story I love to tell, and I've told the dad this, after 30 years that we talked about it. He's he was saying truck.
Okay, what about that group? Lua? Okay.
We took scenario number 2 because all 3 of us are retired in age. Go home, man. Oh, that beats I gotta get up.
Yeah. Myron could paraphrase.
Yeah, I'll talk loud.
No. No.
We
Could
do.
Myron paraphrase?
Oh,
Oh, we have people on Instagram.
Yeah, I think it's.
Okay, well, thank you.
This is why he has 7 jobs.
Yeah, so we took case number 2. We're retired. Our spouse passed away last year. We haven't been involved in the congregation for many years. And we do feel a need to deepen our faith, and we just feel a need to be connected to kind of to kind of replace the loss of the spouse. And of course, the church isn't going to be able to fully replace that loss, but it is going to help to compensate a little bit. We're we're looking for a welcoming group, a friendly group, somebody who is going to take us in, who's going to give us a sense of family that we're missing. And we're looking for friendships. We're looking for maybe a Bible study or a small group where we can grow and where we can feel acceptance and learn a little bit. And we're looking for friendships, but not necessarily, and probably not for relationships. And so we're just looking for a welcoming church, a friendly church, somewhere where we can fit in, be fed spiritually, but most as importantly, be accepted and and just have that sense of family and community that we're missing in our private life.
Okay, group. This group.
So we talked about number 1, and it was somewhat similar to Michael's story. You know, a parent shows up, has a child that's a little unruly during church time, and how do we, and so we talked about ways that, it'd be good if someone, might kind of redirect the child and, give them a place where they can do that, may not bother, some of the other adults or those in worship, and not to, try not to make that parent feel bad, or try not to judge if you think the parent should be doing something to work with that child. So be aware of how we're responding to someone that's acting maybe outside the norms of behavior, but make them feel welcome and take them as they are when you go in. We also talked briefly about number 2, and that one of the things that people say happens, when either a marriage ends or, a spouse, a partner dies, is that all of a sudden sort of your married friends kind of cut you off. And so you really are looking for that friendly place where you are accepted as one, and you don't need that second person to be a part of it. So keep that in mind, when people are coming to you in these situations, where they might be coming from and how you might help them. And it might be, oh, would you like to, may I sit with you this morning? That kind of thing.
Thank you. And I'm gonna go to this side of the room.
I was coloring.
Yeah, we had a great conversation. We did case 1 and 2, and we have a lot of great ministers in this group who've experienced these. So, the case 1, we were all pretty much like, if a single parent with a child comes into our church, trying not to mob them is the biggest problem. Kathy talked about how she, from the pulpit, she has reaffirmed families before, if a child makes noise, been like, those are the types of noises we like in our church. Yeah, we love baby noises is the phrase she used. And I've seen that in my church as well. And that was our similar experience. And then Ramona had a story from case 2 that I thought was interesting, about a retired person whose spouse had died in the previous year, who did start coming to her church, but the spouse had attended her church, but the husband didn't attend. And then after the spouse attended, the husband did attend, but all he did was attend, and he didn't talk at all, and he would come and leave and come and leave. And we talked about that one because that's difficult, in a sense, because you don't necessarily know when someone comes to your church. They're not going to come, as we talked about, and say, hey, my name is Dave and my spouse died last year and I'm looking to deepen my faith, right? That's not the initial conversation. That's you're going to find that out. And then, it's going to be on you as the greeter, or like the friend on the second lunch visit, to not immediately in your face be like, oh no, right? Like, because that's a pretty traumatic thing to talk about. And when someone opens up to you, to be able to talk with that. So we had good roundabout on these 2, and that's all we got through.
In either case, you should ask them if they'd like to be on.
Oh, and Jade mentioned through Quaker Connect, they had a congregation where the ushers didn't know what to say, and it was awkward. And so they had a lot of visitors, 3 to 5 visitors every Sunday. And so what they started doing was training the ushers and giving them some guidance on things they could say that they would be comfortable saying. And then that really helped a lot too.
And talking about intentionality, right? I'm gonna go to this mic. Oh no. So, so this is a very helpful exercise to do in your church, like every possible scenario. And I think we have on our structures, we have certain things that we try to have it, certain procedures and things that are incorporated in our church. But I haven't heard that we have like, what if, we have children with neurodivergent needs, like, like a kind of guidelines, a kind of thing that you can go to, so that if someone comes to your church and that they are, for some reason, you happen to know that they are going through a divorce, or they are going through this, and then you can see, well, we have these, or, you are very affirmed, or you are like, not just catch you in the moment, and you can say, happy to have you, see you next Sunday, or something like that, right? And this is a very helpful exercise. Like, what if someone who desperately, there are a lot of people who come on Easter and Christmas, and they only come on Easter and Christmas. And I've seen that, and I remember back in Richmond, I reached out to a young couple, and I said, happy to have you here. And I started talking to them. The guy lived in Winchester, and they were very nice, and they started coming the next Sunday, and the following Sunday, and I was I was the only one. I have to say, I have to be honest. I was the only one talking to them. And then because I moved here and there, I was not able to go the third Sunday, and then they stopped coming. So that to have people on duty is really important, and how to get the other thing is a growing number of congregations have small social groups. I didn't know that the church that I go in Richmond had a checkup every Friday, and I've been attending for two years, and these are the kind of things that would keep you engaged during the week, and maybe I think in First Friends they do the Connections Committee. They're oh, you are into music. We have a musician. This is so and so. How and connect those people, and they have something in common to relate to one another. Or have we are talking about in Iglesia Amigos to start a men's group, so that and it doesn't have to be let's go and be holy, or just go and maybe have a soccer match or something like that once a month. In Carmel they have board games, and those kind of small groups that build a small community. It doesn't have to be it can be only 3 people, and it is really. But those are the kind of things that we need to be intentional about doing. We have different interests among each other. Some people like knitting, some people like rock music, some people like classical music, some people like. But perhaps a good point of start is what are you into? Do we know what are the things that our fellow congregants like? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And if we don't, that is another starting point. People have different, every person has a world of difference between one another. We saw these cases on the paper, and if we talk about young adults, it's also a world of difference between a young adult and a young adult. And the situations of the various life situations of young adults, for example, a young adult might be single in college, married in college, single working, single no children, single that didn't go to college and it's working, and there are other factors they might be sojourning, so they might be just in town to go to college, and they might be or they might be there in town starting a family and settling down, or they might be looking for a job. And all these different situations, our structures need to be ready for that. Which categories of young adults are most likely to feel good about what happens in congregation, and how can we incorporate them. Um, some of the aspects for welcoming young adults is troubles with justice systems are also part of some young adults. And a young adult today arrested for a crime is three or four times more likely to be incarcerated for it than his or her boomer counterpart 10 years ago. We have in Richmond an ESR student classmate. He got confirmed at the Catholic Church, and there was a young adult group there, and then I soon realized that three out of 10 of those young adults had a previous problem with the law. So how do we welcome that? When they come and we got to know that, what are we gonna do? These kind of conversations are really helpful. Financial prospects for young adults today may not be as positive as in some past generations. So people are constantly changing jobs, as Sophia said. So are our structures ready to host that energy? The cost of college education has also skyrocketed. Grants and scholarships have become harder to obtain. And how can we be attentive to these needs? The nature of family has changed, as we saw before, and there is a chart that I don't know if it's there, that it says 68% of people 19 to 35 that are non-members of a church says that the local church is too much like an institution or a bureaucracy. 19 to 35-year-olds who are members, 61% also say that. And 36 and older, only 30% say that. And we've got to something that I really like the 86% of 19 to 35-year-olds said you can be a good Christian even though you don't belong to a local church. Is this correlational? Or is this just a casualty? I think it's correlated. How can we focus our structures and committees to not be going through so much barriers? I was talking to Sophia these days, 3 years for a 70-year-old is not 3 years for a 20-year-old. For a 20-year-old, 1 year is just almost like 10 years. So to wait for a Quaker process to go for 3 or 4 months might be the deciding factor. If you want to change, if you want to put a couch in a living room, and it takes you 3 or 4 months to go through the Quaker process to take that couch, it's like in 10 years, what am I gonna do? is it possible to be helpful without like delaying 10 years of business meetings to be to actively participate in them? We need to focus more on doing than deciding, especially during things that buying a couch, changing the windows, and things like that. I understand, and I'm not talking about like super, like, okay, so doctrinal stuff. I think that's something that we know who we are, and we know what we stand for. But there are other things that we can be more active. Let's be prepared to more quickly integrate enthusiastic young adults into the life of the church. Let's recognize the reality that young adults who have not grown up in the church may not be familiar with many things which the rest of us take for granted. Let's provide many opportunities of actual leadership that don't require so much time on deciding something for young adults. And we need to prioritize relationships over rigid organizational charts. How much is it worth it to stick to maintain a process and lose a relationship with a newcomer? Maybe, I'm not talking about like core values. I'm talking about material needs. I'm talking about maybe organizing a committee, or buying a table, or things like that. And for this last part, I want to challenge you. Share a meal with a young adult, single, couple, or family. Someone that is not the majority of the church. And go to a church that you have absolutely no connection prior whatsoever, and see what it's like. See if you can, and intentionally see if you can fit in at once, or what are the things that might be an experience worth sharing in your church. And if possible, reach out to someone who is inactive in the congregation or might be unchurched. Thank you.
Just real quickly, we have made a switch. We're going to move lunch tomorrow to 11:30, a little earlier, so it allows us to have some worship time together, make sure everything's packed up, eat a little earlier lunch so that people can go just a little bit earlier. So love for that to happen, and so we've made that arrangement already. And there's no actual ice cream tonight because we had it at dinner, right? That's what happened. So yes, we're